All right, guys. Well, we are live. It's our normal Sunday coffee with Keto Mojo Go-Go. And we had a fantastic day yesterday. But today, before I get started talking about our event yesterday, I want to introduce my brother, Michael Van Dorn. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Michael?
Yes. Like my brother and my sister here, I've also had weight problems most of my life. And I even did the Atkins thing and had great success with it until people started telling me I was going to die from it. And so I stopped and wasn't able to maintain. So I'm back on using keto and
You actually inspired us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, before we knew about keto, you again were starting the low carb lifestyle. I think it was in 2016 or 2017.
2016.
2016, and so that was inspiring to us. We were looking up to you. We dabbled in low carb at that point, but at that point, low carb to us meant I think less than 150 carbs or something like that. It was not as restrictive on carbs as keto is.
And we were still having cheat days.
Right.
And low carbs. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. The more carbs you eat, the more you want, right? And so we were never able to be consistent with it. And we did lose a little weight at first, but it didn't stick. And so you were more successful with lower carb.
It was actually my second attempt, and actually lost 88 pounds.
Right.
And so that's when I came to be with you guys.
Yeah, so life happened. You went away. Now you're back again visiting with us, which is great. And but you travel pretty much full time, right? And so maybe your stick might be, how to maintain a low carb, high fat lifestyle on the road at some point, right? Yeah. Where you might start creating videos, and we can collaborate, right?
Right, exactly.
No pressure, but I think we can accomplish a lot together. And you going around the country, you might be able to help other people, because really that's what we're looking to do, right? It's just, it's not about us as much as it is people we can influence and help maintain a lifestyle as much as we are. So, I think that's important. So yesterday was, we live in the Tampa area, and it was the Adapt Your Life Tampa Keto event, and it featured Dr. Eric Westman. He's the CEO of the organization anyway. And
awesome guy.
What's nice is because we have built the protocol that we follow on top of his protocol.
Because he really made it simple.
Right. He simplified it, and so it makes it easy to share. And one of the things he talked about, he's a researcher. He's a doctor. He's also a practicing doctor who sees patients as well. But he can only influence so many people, right? He wrote the peer-reviewed papers. But if people aren't looking for peer-reviewed papers, it's not helping very many people. So he started an organization, this Adapt, and his Heal Clinics, so that it can be exposed to more people. More people can get help, right, through his Heal Clinics and through these groups that he's setting up that, we're partnering with, that can find the answer, that, your doctor is not giving you this information. People aren't reading peer-reviewed papers. So this is a great opportunity for the information to get spread. And so it was a great thing. There were a lot of good guest speakers. I want to talk a little bit about each of them. We all will bounce off the things that we learned from each of the guest speakers. And
it was a fantastic day. We just really learned a lot.
Yeah, and it was nice. I think there were about 100 people there, you think?
Yeah,
it was at the Hillsborough Community College, which is nice because it's only 7 minutes away from the house here. So we actually had no excuse not to go to something like that. Not that I wouldn't anyway, but it was a really nice event. It lasted from 9 in the morning till almost 5 o'clock. I think it was only scheduled to go through like 3:30, but it went through all the way through 5 o'clock, which was great. We got a lot of personal time with Dr. Westman and the other speakers, so it was very cozy and good that way. So I really liked it. So if you have an opportunity to attend events like this, I highly recommend it because there's so much information. In some ways, it was like a fire hose of information because there was just so much coming at you. But, everybody had books to sell or free handouts and things like that you could then take things home with and still be able to retain it. And, of course, they all have Facebook and YouTube and social media and their own web pages. So once you learn about these people, you can definitely dig into their stuff. And that's kind of what I did too. So the first person that was a speaker was Dr. Lisa Koch, and she is a local provider here in Tampa, in South Tampa. And she is not just a doctor, but she's a triple boarded medical doctor, which is pretty impressive. That just means she has three disciplines that she's actually accepted at a high rate at that she's gone through. So it's not just one discipline she's good at. She's good at several. Impressive. She was, as a child, she recovered, or was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. She had heart failure as a result of her chemotherapy. And a few years ago, she was on a heart transplant list. So she went from that to...
Didn't she say she was almost on the list?
No, she was on the list.
Oh.
She was on the list.
Almost going to get the heart.
Yeah, she was going to get the heart transplant. But she went from that by changing her diet, changing her lifestyle. She went from
Keto.
that, using ketogenic diet, from that to actually being a super athlete now. Now she goes to these
She's amazing.
places where she actually tests her VO2 max, right, which is what the super athletes do, right? So that's impressive. I've never heard of anybody that went from heart failure to being a super athlete before in my life.
Right.
That's more than just driven. That's actually overcoming physical obstacles that it seems like it should be impossible. And she, like I said, she's a local provider here, and she wrote a book also called Get Lit. And so her philosophy is, she looks at like a light bulb scenario. So either dim things or lit things. And dim things could include mindset or diet, right? Dietary things, which are, things that are toxic to your body that might be driving you down, might be hurting your thyroid and things of that nature. So did you get any else thing that you really found interesting from Lisa?
The fact that she recommends you get out first thing in the morning and spend 5 or 10 minutes, kind of looking into the sun.
Not directly at the sun, but towards the sun. Yeah.
And with your feet on the earth to connect back to the earth, that it's actually healing. And
right. She brought up the fact that the ketogenic diet actually improves your mitochondria, which is basically your power plants inside your body, right?
yeah, that's amazing.
Right. And she talked about how the mitochondria are just like a plant's chlorophyll. They look exactly the same. And so they behave the same way. So sunlight is an important component of chlorophyll as it is a part of the mitochondria. So, getting outside more often is really important, whether it be first thing in the morning or whatever you can. It's definitely not going to hurt. And she also uses some non-traditional means. It's not just diet. And she also uses regular medicine too, because she is a medical doctor, but she uses some infrared sauna, some oxygen therapy, and a few other things as well. So yeah, these are other things you can explore. I mean, she went from heart failure, right, leukemia, to being healthy. So obviously she took some aggressive methods, right? Can you think of anything else that?
Well, I thought what was interesting about her was, especially when she started out as a kid with leukemia, she had their question like, "Why me?" Well, she didn't just ask the question as though she felt sorry about it. She dug in. I mean, that's why she became a doctor.
Right.
And everything she does is the total person. Are we doing the right things based on opinion or polls? She actually comes up in there doing the science, and that's what's really interesting.
I agree. Man, that was great. So that was Dr. Lisa Koch, and I said her book is Get Lit. She's a provider in Tampa. I recommend looking her up. She's got some good information. Matter of fact, all of these speakers, what I thought was interesting too, that all the speakers here, they didn't necessarily agree 100% on things, but there wasn't a clash of, oh my gosh, you're wrong or whatever. There's bandwidth, right? There's an umbrella of ideas here, and some things work for some people, some things work for other people.
You gotta figure out what works for you.
It's not a competition.
It's their whole message.
Yeah. All right. So then the next speaker was Dr. Eric Westman. He spoke a little bit early because they had to move things around. So he's a researcher, and as I said, he's a medical practitioner. And one of the things that he was bringing to light was, up until say 2002, 2005-ish range, we had a lot of anecdote. But now, he was with Duke University. Now there's Ohio State University. Now we have here in the University of South Florida, we got data. We have the data to now back up the strength of the low carb, high fat diet and how it impacts health, how it impacts not just weight loss, but in all sorts of aspects. Brain health, reduces or reverses type 2 diabetes, cholesterol it fixes, triglycerides. I mean, these are all things that are improved at a much higher rate using, actually, it's not even a contest, using a low carb, high fat versus other dietary methods or diet and exercise combinations. So we now have the data to back it up. What I like about Dr. Westman also, he uses a very measured approach. He doesn't make any claims that are not backed up by data. So if anybody asked him a question, if he didn't have the data to support it, he didn't give a definitive, yes, this is true, no, this is not true. He would say, well, here's what the data supports. And I think that's a very responsible way of dealing with the public. It's probably lawsuit-wise, it makes sense too, because you don't want to go down a path of saying one thing and then somebody coming after you. So I think it's a very measured response. Some of the things he also covered, based on, this is 60 years of research now, but I'm sorry, 60,000 patients. From the way that Dr. Atkins did this back in the 70s, 1972, they had 60,000 patients through that time. And they found that for people that stayed below 20 grams of carbs per day, 100% of them were able to get into ketosis and fat burning mode. Some people were able to at a little higher levels, whether it be 30 grams or 50 grams. But as far as the approach that we're following, that he kind of admonishes, if everybody eats less than 20 grams of carbs per day, they will be in fat burning mode. But that also means be consistent, right? Consistency, it means that you don't do low carb for 23 hours and 59 minutes a day. You have to be consistently low carb, 20 grams or less for weeks to really get into a mode of fat burning, right? For some people, it might be 48 hours. Some people, it might be 3 or 4 weeks before they actually get into the mode. And that's one of the reasons for people that say, oh, I'll do low carb Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, they're going to eat regular. It might take some people 3 weeks to get back into it. So you never actually get back into it. You stay outside of the range. And then if you aren't successful, well, it's not the protocol's fault. It's your fault for not following the protocol, right? So don't blame the protocol if you're not following it, essentially is what he was saying. He also said that, if you're following the protocol properly, it's effective 100% of the time. If you deviate from that protocol, obviously it's not effective. So the other things that are important for this protocol are it reduces your blood pressure, your blood glucose, corrects your HDL and triglycerides, and those actually are more important than weight loss, right? Because weight loss does happen, but there's some people that are impacted by the medicines they take or some certain medical conditions that prevents them from losing weight right away. But if you can still fix these other things, you're still miles ahead of where you were. So there's that. He mentioned some, ketoacidosis being another thing that people get concerned about. There are 3 factors of ketoacidosis. So if people ask you about that is, let's see, where is it at? And you have to have high blood glucose. So if you're in keto, that fixes that right away. You have to have extremely high ketones, like 10, and high in keto would be 4. So it's not even close. And you have to not be producing insulin. So keto doesn't stop you from preventing insulin in any way. It might regulate it because you don't have so much sugar. But those are 3 factors that have to happen. And so that only happens in 2 types of people. One with people that have type 1 diabetes, and that could be whether they're using a ketogenic diet or not. And the other type is a new thing called pharmacological ketoacidosis. And so this could actually be caused by your doctor. By
medications.
Prescribing you Jardians or Apenza. Those are 2 medicines that have been known to cause pharmacological ketoacidosis, no matter what type of diet you're on. So keto doesn't cause it, all right? All right. So he also mentioned if you have serious medical conditions such as type 1 diabetes, if you have a BMI greater than 50, if you have active kidney disease or liver disease, you should probably be under medical care when you're doing keto. He did not say don't do keto. Did anybody here say that?
No.
No. He just said be under doctor's care.
Should probably be under doctor's care anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's not anything new. It's not just because you're doing keto, but you should be under a doctor's care regardless. And if you're on, diabetes medicine, whether you're under a doctor's care or not, if you're on keto, make sure you monitor it because you're going to need to back off on those as you are, going through. Your blood glucose will drop. It'll drop into a normal range, and if you're on medicines, it may push you down into too low of a range. Right. So, anything else that you guys have on that?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the simplicity of what he talked about. It's a choice. You can be a fat burning machine or you can be a sugar burning machine, right? So by doing keto, you're burning your own fat if you're not hyping too much calorie with fat. And the other thing is, like, I call his method what I call the base method. If you do it, it'll work for everyone, right? There's other people that did things that they had it for different purposes for the athletes, things like that. So it was really good because it just broke it down, made it simple.
Yeah, for fat burning purposes, weight loss purposes, his is definitely the way to go. All right, anything you thought, any impressions you got from his?
Just really enjoyed him. Just the fact that he said if you eat more, the more fat you intake, the less it might burn your own fat.
Right.
That's a pretty important thing too. So
that's right. Yeah, keto.
Don't feel like you have to do the fat bombs and the buttered coffee and this and that. You want to burn your own fat.
That's true. The ketogenic diet, no matter how you practice it, whether you're eating it in this method or you're using other methods, you're still a fat burning machine. The difference being if you're trying to maintain 75, 80% fat, the dietary fat has to be consumed first. Right. And so you still burn fat. It's just not your fat. Right. And so that's kind of, the thing is he's been around for a long time doing this. This is not new. So like MCT oil and exogenous ketones and bulletproof coffee have only been around for the last maybe 5 years. Those again, they're great, but they're not really for fat loss.
But they're high calorie.
And they also have, they're calorie dense, and right. So they again, that's stuff that's got to get out of the way.
So the thing we did is we overdid it at first.
Sure.
And actually, I hit what they call a plateau, but we figured out it was because of the coffee.
Yeah, that's one of the things about simplicity as well, because a lot of people think of keto, and originally it was practiced for kids with epilepsy, right? And so those fat ratios really were important. But it gets confused with a weight loss nutritional ketosis, which is, don't be afraid of fat, but don't overconsume it either because you want to burn your fat, not dietary fat. And so that's that. Okay, the next person to talk, a young guy, Dr. Ryan Lowry.
Very impressive.
So he was a national champion baseball player, and he has a master's in exercise physiology and exercise nutrition at the University of Tampa, another local guy. And he has a PhD in health and human performance at Concordia University. And so he's done the research on building muscle in keto, because one of the things, the myths that you hear out there, maybe it's
you can't build muscle on keto.
Yeah, you can't build muscle on keto. If you're going to work out or whatever, you're going to eat lean muscle mass, and that'll depreciate. But so he took that myth and put science to it. He put people to it. He's got a performance center where people go in, and they actually are building muscle as good, if not better, than the high carb diet people. As a matter of fact, from what he saw was a ketogenic diet by itself builds muscle as well as a high carb diet with exercise, right? I mean, they're like even. And if you do a ketogenic diet with exercise, it's well above the combined normal diet with exercise. So it's actually improved. It's an improved performance. Hi, Roberta. Glad to see you. Okay. We're still here, Roberta. We're still going. We got a lot to cover yet.
He's live.
All right. So, I mean, that was one of the things. So, and the other thing that he talked about was pro athletes and people that are competitive. It takes sometimes, 3 weeks to even a couple of months to actually transition from sugar burning to fat burning. So you might actually want to back off a little bit in your training until you get fully adapted. And then when you get fully adapted, again, the performance level is better, if even better than the high carb diet people. Eventually you transition, and I know in a lot of cases you don't need to eat so often, you don't have to take the breaks, and so you actually get better performance just based on that fact. And it's
The fact that he's researching this is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is. Another thing that he showed was how a low carb, high fat, and and as a result, calorie reduced diet with intermittent fasting and fasting slows the effect of aging.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed basically a picture of two monkeys that were the same age, right? One on a regular diet that a monkey would eat, kind of like the American diet though, versus a low carb, high fat. And the monkey that ate the regular diet looked really old. His hair was falling out,
Horrible.
his sunken in eyes. And the other guy, matter of fact, what he did, which one is older was what the picture was. And then being the same age, the other one was extremely healthy looking, full fur, the whole thing. So it's just one of the things that just kind of, again, a monkey is not a human, right? But that's kind of some evidence that's showing that aging, it gets slowed down by eating in this method, using a ketogenic diet versus the standard American diet. They're also doing some research on Parkinson's disease, which was very hopeful. And they're not doing it so much with a straight ketogenic diet at first. They're going to be moving that way, but what they're doing now is giving them exogenous ketones. And so they use an eye movement test, and immediately it improved that, to almost normal.
That was incredible.
For people with Parkinson's. So if they were on a diet that did that, they gave them the ketones, and they lived that all the time, they would probably be a lot better off. And then in those cases, when you're talking about brain injuries or neurotic symptoms, exogenous ketones might be just fine, right? It's not for fat loss. It's a different purpose, right? And so that's where that is great. So did you guys get any more else out of what he was talking about?
Well, the fact that he's so young is very impressive.
Very young.
And he's doing all that research. And
That was Doc. Yeah.
The one thing I thought was interesting when he was talking about it for performance, he compared the runner, maybe the long distance runner, where they have to carb up big time before the race. And the keto type one doesn't have to carb up as much because the energy is sustained for a longer period.
Right.
Where the runner, they will burn that off really quick, and they may run out of energy by the end of the race, so they got to keep carbing up.
Yeah, so that's giving them food as they're running, or maybe some packets or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. Or eat lots of bananas, maybe bananas along the way, right? Which burns right through it. Whereas it's slow and steady as far as energy
keto
wins
is
the
going to
race.
perform just fine.
Yeah, you're not going to have less of these spikes and valleys.
They sustain much longer.
Yeah. All right. So that was Dr. Ryan Lowry, if you want to look him up. The next was a young lady by the name of Suzanne Ryan, and she was quite impressive. So I don't know. She probably looked like maybe she's in her mid-20s, would you say?
She's very young.
Very young.
Yeah, she's very young.
So she has already written an international bestseller called Simply Keto. Yeah, there it is. And, she's written this book.
I got a signed copy.
Yeah, she did. So this young lady's impressive.
Lady.
So she's been on keto for 3 years now. This is a 3-year anniversary, but she lost 120 pounds using keto, and it took her. Matter of fact, she kind of put up a slide, much like us, where she has tried every single diet, weight loss protocol.
She was a runner.
She had Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, Curves,
yeah,
all of them.
Everything was up there
that we've done, and maybe even more. She's done it all. And she had every year where she did her New Year's resolution was lose weight.
We all do.
Right. But she had it all in her Facebook memory. She could see it every time. it took her, even for keto, right? It took her, I think, 3 times before she got a protocol that really worked for her, right? I think the first time she did it, she, January 1st of one year, I'm doing keto, I'm going strong. January 2nd, she put it in there. Yep, I tried keto, and it was
great while it lasted.
Great while it lasted, right? So, I mean, everybody has to find their why.
She tried 2 times.
But I mean, she tried low carb, but I mean, she really.
The second time, she did it for her 1-year-old because she wasn't able to get down and play with her baby like she wanted to. So she did it for her child, and I think that is very inspiring too. You know, the fact that she couldn't move without pain, and she was depressed, but she had this child, and she got up and she did it for her. She did it for herself, but she did it for her child, and that's inspiring.
Yeah, we all have to find our reason, right? And I mean, in our case, or at least in my case, it was when I got the official diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, and you're going to have to go on insulin, right? So that was my line in the sand. Hers was her son.
Her daughter,
her child. And I mean, we all have our, what that is. So, I mean, everybody's got to do it, and everybody's going to come at a different time. So she has the Keto Karma website, which is hers. And one thing I found.
Keto Karma. Look her up. She's an impressive young lady. Beautiful.
Yeah.
What is she, 6 foot tall?
Yeah, she is 6 foot tall. She's a tall girl. Yeah. And one of the things that she talked about that I found was impressive that we all go through, especially if we've been overweight for a significant amount of time. And that would be that cycle of, you're stressed, so you emotionally eat. Then after you emotionally eat, you feel guilt, which then leads to more stress, which causes you to emotionally eat. And so it's this endless cycle.
And I've been that emotional eater. I am an emotional eater.
We all are. Matter of fact, one of the things that
I thought that was a great graph, and I could relate to that.
Dr. Westman asked a question for all of us. He goes, well, raise your hand if you are a carb addict, right? And about half the room raised their hand, and he goes, well, it looks like the other half of the room just hasn't realized it yet.
Yeah.
Because we're all carb addicts, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I know I'm going to have to stay under 20 grams. Otherwise, I'm going to take off and
I don't know
right
if
back
they'll
to
be
it
able
again.
to see it. But here's a picture of when she started.
And
that's,
move it a little closer if you want.
Yeah, that's her husband and her child.
Right. So you can
her
see
daughter.
How far she's come.
Yeah, she's come quite a ways. She's very impressive.
Right.
Inspiring young lady.
But even going forward, right, so now she's lost 120 pounds, but she still realizes that, you still have these memories of being fat in your body, and it still impacts your self-esteem, body dysmorphia. You still think of yourself as that fat person. And so she's even helpful for people that are already lost the weight. I mean, I think this is a really an awesome young lady. I was impressed by her.
Yeah.
So.
She inspired me.
Yeah, I have to say that when she was talking, she says most of the time we fail because we ourselves don't believe we can do it, right? And the other thing is the importance of having groups like this. Because you don't believe yourself, you may have your weight loss, you may have success, but it's better if you have people to connect to. And I think, and it's really important, I think.
Yeah, that's another thing I did connect with. I mean, we started our YouTube channel and at first, and then our YouTube, our Facebook groups and stuff like that was for our own accountability, right? We didn't that was after we had a month of success or 2 months of success that we did it. But before that, we'd failed so many times. Like she said, the kid that cried wolf, I'm going to lose weight this time. But after we saw the measured success, it's like, okay, hey, look, now we have to stay on track.
I wish I had taken my picture, and she was the same way.
Taking our measurements and everything before. But this is our accountability. This video, right, what we're doing right now, it helps us stay accountable. And if we can help other people along the way, that's icing on the cake.
I still,
everybody.
I deal with those emotions, that emotional thinking I can't do it. I deal with that all the time, and I still see myself as bigger.
Right, and you guys
go to the bigger size.
We need to help Shauna here, because yesterday we took our picture with Dr. Westman, and she still is not feeling confident about her picture. So, and I can only beat her down so much.
You are joking. I love you.
All right. All right. So that was Suzanne Ryan. Okay. And her book is Simply Keto. All right. So the next person.
Make sure you go out and get it. It's a very impressive cookbook.
Next person was Danny Vega. And Danny Vega, a Florida native, I think went to the University of Florida. This guy is super buffed. Again, another performance-based keto guy, right? He's not exactly suffering from sarcopenia. In other words, he's not atrophying from muscles from doing keto. This guy is not only great that way, but he's got a wife and I think 2 kids.
Family, yeah.
So and they
2
do
boys.
a podcast called The Fat Fueled Family. So it's not just
Amazing
him and his
family.
wife doing it. He's raising his children using a ketogenic / paleo lifestyle. And when I say paleo a little bit is because he's not giving his kids artificial sweeteners. He's just made that decision. And so he has made the call on for his kids' life that he'd rather sweeten their food with maybe a little bit of apple or a syrup, real syrup. Just a little bit. I mean, not over the top, but just he'd rather give them a little bit natural sources than give them chemicals. I can totally respect that. And again, not everybody agreed on this, and that's okay. I mean, kids are more metabolically flexible than us idiots that have been eating wrong for 50 years, right? So, again, but for the most part, they're not still eating there's 0 processed food in his house, right? There's 0 junk food. It's just real foods, whole foods. So that was that. And another big point that he made was
impressive. He's raising his boys that way.
Talked about protein consumption. So we tend to be afraid of protein because we hear that it's bad for your kidneys or it's not good for you. Over and over and over again, we just kept saying, do not underconsume protein. If you're concerned about eating a 10-ounce steak versus a 12-ounce steak because you're going to have too much protein, you just can't. For one thing, you're going to fill up on protein. It's going to make you feel satiated. And your body needs the protein. It's not just for muscle building. There's all sorts of things that have to happen in your body. The protein
you need it for your hair.
That's right. That's right. One of the things they talked about, if you're on keto and you're having problems with hair loss or things like that,
you're not eating enough protein.
You're not eating enough protein. So just keep that in mind.
I'm not eating enough protein.
So yeah. So keep it in mind, and obviously keep an eye just like you would normally on your labs and things like that. If you all of a sudden see your creatine levels go off the chart or something like that, then you might need to make a simple adjustment, but it's not that. And so the other things I was impressed with him, he talked about continuously optimizing both your diet and lifestyle. Maybe there's some things you might need to tweak occasionally.
Self-experimentation.
Self-experimentation was it. So what else did
what
you
works
get from
for you.
Mr. Vega?
Well, he also has the Fat Fueled Kids, which is a thing that shows what his kid's doing. But no, he was impressive. He's what I call the experimental keto person because he believes you should continue to experiment, find out what works the best. But he's all about performance, right? So he does so he doesn't do the base. He goes over the top, and which is, by the way, nobody disagreed with getting rid of the sugar, the fake sugar. They, like Dr. Weston, he just said the science is not in yet.
Right.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. But one thing that Dr. Westman said is well, obviously there's no health benefit to using artificial sweeteners, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, to not use them is probably better than to use them. But
us women have sweet tooth, so.
Yeah, well, so do us guys. I think the idea of the artificial sweeteners is sometimes it makes it more sustainable. It allows you to stay on this way of eating for some people better. But I know in our evolution, we, initially used more than we do now. And, after this call, this meetup we had yesterday, I'm using even less, right? So now I think yesterday I decided, well, my coffee yesterday, I'm not going to have any sweetener in it. I had 1 cup with sweetener in it this morning, my 2nd cup, no sweetener. So, I mean, if I can just keep stepping it down, it's just continuous improvement, right? It's definitely not hurting anything there. All right. So basically, in his case, he's saying keep experimenting because you really shouldn't be satisfied with the status quo. You can always do better. So that was Danny Vega. Definitely look him up.
Big buff guy. Oh my God.
Huge arms.
Yes. You don't want to mess with Danny Vegan.
Yeah, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion too. So.
Don't mess with Danny
Yeah.
Vegan. Mm-mm.
No.
Good friend to have.
Good friend to have.
Yeah.
Lucky woman.
He's my buddy. He's my pal. Danny Vegan. All right. And the last speaker was a young man by the name of Joshua Perry. And he was a BMX pro athlete. He's a champion. But, I mean, that's astounding enough by itself. But, you know, he was a young man who did this, who started, going
At
down the party
17.
lifestyle and was having a lot of migraines. Asked the doctor for an MRI, didn't get it. And by sheer fortune.
He was having headaches, serious headaches for over a year. And the doctors didn't listen to him. That just breaks my heart.
Yeah, the doctors need to listen. By sheer fortune, and I'm thinking by pure inevitability, he had an accident and hit his head. And then they finally gave him an MRI, and they found out he had a huge brain tumor.
The poor guy. He went through a lot.
He had surgery on that for sure right away. The guy was so driven. I mean, the doctor told him he would probably never ride a bike again. Within a few months,
5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, 5 weeks. Yeah. He was right back to competing again.
I believe that's what he said.
Yeah.
5
The
weeks.
guy's driven. I mean,
Stitches and staples in his head.
And he's out riding his bike again. So.
I'm thinking the head injury might have did more than we realized, but but no. So
very impressive young man.
Impressive young man. But then he had his brain tumors return, right? So he had a total of 4 brain tumors. It was then that he decided that, okay, I need to try things. First, I think he went more vegan, more plant-based, and that maybe helped a little bit. But then they still came back. And then he decided to explore a ketogenic diet, and then over the top, he started using exogenous ketones again. Aggressive treatment, right? So this is not about fat loss. This is about performance.
Yeah,
and
he
saving
was
your
never
life.
overweight. He did it for health reasons.
Right. And also he was having major bouts of depression. So in the last couple of MRIs he's had, his brain tumors have not grown. They have not progressed. And, they were supposed to, right? So it's back to that whole theory is that sugar feeds cancer. It feeds tumors. If you're in ketones, don't. They cannot eat ketones. They cannot grow with it. And so, I mean, that's just another respect. This is becoming more and more proven in science. Right. Again, he was having depression. It helped that. He had some very close friends and his brother that had a lot of depression that ended up committing suicide recently, that he is now.
That story just made me cry.
He wishes that he had been able to convince them to not, to change their diet, and it might have saved their life. And, in our family, I know we've had people that have died prematurely, that we wish that we had known this, that we could have maybe extended their life or at least had a chance at it, right? I'm not saying it's a miracle. It's not the cure-all, but by gosh, it'd be nice if we could at least explore that, right? In everybody's life first before you go to, you're already crashing from carbs up and down. It's impacting your mentality in that way. So, that's already a proven thing. It probably has far more reaching effects than that. So anything else that you guys can think from Joshua Perry?
I know that his story about his friend and his brother committing suicide, I know that just really,
choked him up.
Yeah, choked me up, choked him up. If anything else, if we can inspire anybody, in our family or friends, or you've got friends or loved ones that are depressed or they're just, I don't know, fighting cancer or whatever. And, if there's any chance that keto might help them, if I can inspire other people, that's my dream, is to, save other people's lives.
Again, we're not making any claims. We're not
Change
making
their lives.
It's just, it's one more tool in the toolbox, if you will, right? So I wish doctors would lead with diet and lifestyle more than they do, instead of jumping right to a pill.
We all get depressed because of food-related stuff. So I think it's at the core of depression and food.
Right.
Sometimes go hand in hand.
So the last part of the event, Dr. Westman then did a 1-hour workshop with us, and he treated us as if he were patients coming in to see him for weight loss. I thought that was kind of a really cool way of doing it, right? So he went through the process, talked through it. And one of the things that I did before he got there, at a break, I went up and talked to him, and I showed him our food list and the protocol that we're using, because it's on there. It says that we're using the Dr. Westman protocol. So it was important to me that since I was invoking his name, that he agreed with it, that he was on board with it. And yes, absolutely, he said that is spot on. I mean, this is like, there's a lot of times you go, the word he used was, this is an amazing freemium. So I mean, a lot of things you pay for are a premium, but this is free, but it's a premium output that you're getting. And you remember that in that food list we have, I mean, we talk about exactly what he talked about in this workshop, was that the most important thing is that you eat less than 20 grams a day total of carbohydrates, not net, total, that you eat fatty meats and vegetables until you're full, and then don't eat when you're not hungry. I mean, that's the whole program in a nutshell. But then he then talks about the foods, and so the food lists that we had were lining up with that.
They definitely lined up with his food list.
Yeah, it definitely lines up. So, I mean, if we go through here, this is the pamphlet he gave us, the handout, which is valuable. So, I mean, this is more resources we can take and turn into things that are useful for you guys. So, again, he talks about the carbohydrates, less than 20. He talks about his Adapt website, which is nice because it has even more resources. Oh, and by the way, that reminds me, all the videos and all the speakers we're talking about today, we will post those videos as they become available. So we'll link to them as well, because they were awesome. So he talks about the meats that you can eat as much of as when you're not hungry, because they don't have any carbs. And that would be beef, hamburger steak, pork, ham, bacon, lamb, veal, sausage, pepperoni, hot dogs, organ meats like liver, kidney. I don't know what the sweetbreads is. I'll have to check into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, any meats. And he's even talking about, even processed meats, especially as you're first starting out, you're trying to get
some kind of meat.
Yeah, some kind of meat. I mean, you're trying to get fat adapted, and these are available. These are what you can afford. Don't worry so much about the quality. Just get on the program. Poultry, chicken, turkey, duck, fish and shellfish. That can be tuna, salmon, catfish, bass, trout. I mean, and eggs. And make sure whole eggs, not just the egg whites.
The yolks are very important.
Yeah, you said it's like
nutrients.
He sees an egg white omelet, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to him. You need the yolk. And one of the things he said was like, eggs are so nutritious. I mean, you can take an egg and create a whole chicken out of it. I mean, that's how much nutrition is inside of an egg. And then as far as vegetables go, for salad greens, he said like arugula, bok choy, cabbage, chard, chives, mustard greens, turnip greens, kale. For those, you can have up to 2 cups a day, and that's actually quite a bit of raw vegetable. And then if you cook it down, it's a nice portion. And the non-starchy vegetables.
In your hand is about a cup.
A cup. So about a fistful.
That's what he was saying.
Non-starchy vegetables. And those would be artichokes, asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, celery, cucumber. No, don't do cucumber. Cucumber is poison. No, not really. To me, it is. Eggplant, green beans. And then, avoid the starchy vegetables like potatoes and the sweet potatoes. Avoid those because they are more carby, right? But as far as non-starchy, you can have a cup of those. And then he talked about things that might help you as you're transitioning, because some people, they get what's called the keto flu. It's basically a lack of electrolytes. And one thing he suggested was maybe a little bit of bouillon twice a day. We know it's got MSG and things like that in it, but it's just as you're transitioning, you might need something that you may need to help you with your electrolytes. And that's a very simple way to do it. I know in our case, we did Powerade Zero, but really you want things that...
I did pickle juice.
Yeah, pickle juice, and she takes a little bit of slow release magnesium. He recommended if you're having leg cramps, maybe taking a teaspoon of milk of magnesia every night for a week. Shauna loves that stuff.
No.
But anyway, so that's kind of what that's about, because there will be a transitionary period, especially if you're jumping straight from a standard American diet right to 20 grams of carbs a day. Your body will need to make an adjustment. So he just talked about some things that might make it a little easier on you. other foods that are allowed in limited quantities would be like butter, coconut oil, peanut oil. He said to avoid seed oils here. He did say it.
Yeah.
So,
He didn't personally say it.
it's in his,
Yeah,
It's
but
in
it's in his book.
it's in his book. So a little bit of oil, you can cook with it. You can maybe make, salad dressings out of it, etc. Cheese up to 4 ounces a day. And, look at the ingredients. If it's for some reason they pushed a bunch of carbs into it or
And
something.
Roberta's
avoid
favorite,
those.
goat cheese.
Goat cheese, right up
Goat
there.
cheese.
Yeah. Hard cheeses, of course, we prefer those.
My favorite too.
Yeah. So he talks about those, like creams and things like that. 2 tablespoons a day. So he talked about maybe mayonnaise, olives, up to 6 a day, avocado, a half of those a day. Pickles, he even limits those. So those are things that you can eat. And again, you can make a lot of meals of that, and it mirrors the food list that we're giving. So, I mean, if you have any questions on that, just you go to our site. If you want to respond here, send me the food list. We'll definitely reply and send that to you as well. So some of the other things he talks about was drinking lots of liquids. So make sure you stay hydrated. That's one of the things that people start getting symptoms from. They forget to drink. So drink, and I think that was a common theme throughout the session as well. Don't forget to drink water. He said, maybe boiling on a broth might help.
And don't forget he did mention those microwave pork rinds too.
Yes, as far as zero carb snacks, and he said, he's really not worried about how much you eat of these. He said the sugar-free Jell-O, which is fine. Shauna can't eat that because the aspartame gives her headaches. But as far as a carb basis, they're fine. He said maybe even put a little bit of whipped cream on it, like not, but just a little bit. Pork rinds, he says, are fine, and he talked about the microwavable pork rinds, which we've discovered recently, and they are wonderful.
And you can get those off of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
They're amazing. It's a good popcorn replacement. If you're crazy about popcorn like I am, and you need something salty and crunchy, get the microwave popcorn or microwave pork rinds.
Beef jerky, deviled eggs. I mean, these things are fine. And he didn't, again, he's saying standard 20 grams of carbs a day, maybe 1 gram of sugar in beef jerky or something. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's not going to knock you out of ketosis. We'd like to have no sugar. But the thing is that we need to find things that make this sustainable and affordable for a lot of people, right? So it's ideal if you can find something that has 0 sugar, but if it's got 1 gram, as long as you're not going over 20, you're still in ketosis. You're all right. Again, this is practical keto. This is an extremely practical way of looking at it. If you might initially face some sugar cravings, but he says, if you can just kind of hold off on it, or maybe eat some of these sugar-free snacks, they might help you get through it. I mean, obviously, if you are strong enough to not do it at all, you're going to be better off for it, right? Those cravings will pass quicker. So there's that. Constipation, again, is where we talked about the milk and magnesia. You might want to eat a few vegetables if you're feeling constipated, etc. As far as keto breath, again, he talked about maybe brushing your teeth, sugar-free gum, things like that, that people are making a big objection. Oh my gosh, I've got the keto breath. Yeah, come on, deal with it. It's not that big a deal. All right, so if you slip, this is one of the things I like. If you have a bad, you eat something you shouldn't have eaten and you knocked yourself out, well, then fix it with the very next meal. The next meal, just leave the carbs off, right?
Yeah, don't eat the carbs.
Anything else that you guys can think of? I mean, there's a lot more in here we could talk about, but I just want to kind of keep it to a minimum. But anything else that you got out of that workshop?
Yeah, actually, what I got out of it was Dr. Westman has been doing this for a while, trying to get information out of what works for weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
And he's published papers. He's done everything to get it out there, and it doesn't get reproduced by any other organization. The other thing is the science behind this really goes back to 1863.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It was a guy named Banting.
Banting.
He was do it that way. And I've done study as to why we went where we did for the food pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you it has more to do with marketing
Right.
than it has to do. And you just have to realize that people that lobby our government get a lot of influence and they can change things. In this case, it wasn't changed for our benefit.
Right.
So getting the word out, being groups like this, and actually the doctor is looking for people to help so he can take information of our results and people's results. And anyway, I just had a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, you know, one thing Dr. Westman told us before we left, because we chatted with him in the last few minutes before we left, we mentioned our Facebook groups, our Keto for Autoimmune, our Keto Mojo Go-Go, our Keto for Autism. And he said he wants to help us as much as he can, and he wants to be able to make these as focus groups so we can turn academia around. And I about cried on that because
that meant a lot.
Because, you know, he's already been down the path of writing peer-reviewed papers and they're not getting referenced. So now we can use social media and these Facebook groups to become the example, to become the N=1 studies and now the batch studies of how a low-carb, high-fat diet or even a carnivore diet might help people in a lot of ways. Because one of the things he also mentioned was, have you noticed a trend of the carnivorous in all of our speakers here? A lot of us are, we're eating less and less vegetables and we're not having any negative effects. As a matter of fact, we're getting healthier. Not saying that he's pushing a carnivore agenda.
I think that's just the trend that we all take.
Seems to be.
We want that satisfaction of the meat. It's more satisfying than the vegetables.
I see Dr. Abby Campbell has joined us. Hello, Doc. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you watch the replay. And I did share it with the new carnivore keto wellness group that you guys created. So
shout out to you guys.
Shout out to you guys. We wish you great success in that. So, gosh, my guys got anything else to say? This has been fun. But
Good.
It's good.
Anybody have any questions or concerns or anything that are out there that we can address? Again, any topics that you might think of. Look for any future ADAPT events that are coming up in your area. I highly recommend it.
I know I want to go to more.
Yeah, it's rather addictive. And cost-wise, it was $60. I think we definitely got our $60 out of it and more. So I definitely recommend things of that nature for sure.
Inspiring stories. And what was one of the guys said that it's kind of like, we're reaching out to other people and it's just kind of like a...
Yeah, I think of it like the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
So you impact one person, they impact another person, they impact three more people, right? And so, yeah, I mean, this is a ripple effect that you don't realize what you're doing by yourself. I mean, the fact that you're choosing to eat better and your health is getting better, other people are noticing. You don't even necessarily have to talk about it because I know in my case, people come up and ask. And people that I work with are like, you've lost a lot of weight. What are you doing differently? So people
we want to inspire you
evidence-based
to inspire other people and just keep that ripple effect going.
Right. So
I couldn't think of the word.
It's okay. These are things that will happen better for you over time. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for following us. Thanks for giving us part of your Sunday. We'll give you the rest of it back. But as we'll say now, Keto Mojo Go out.
Hey, you didn't do that.
I didn't do that.